Actually, free and fair.
Why? Ina normal. Okay, maybe I'm on this one.
Actually, free and fair.
Patrick, what do you think? Do you think this was a fair election? Do you think it will stand?
No, I think it was a deeply flawed election in many, many ways. I think there were sins of omission. That is to say, the National Electoral Commission had a very sophisticated form of digital reporting, which involved getting the signed results by all the parties in each of the 177,000 polling stations, getting those recorded digitally on their phone cameras, and entering that into the INEC recording devices, which would then transmit those images to the collation centres, both within the region and nationally. So there was a digital check on all the results being entered into the system, and everyone that was participating in those elections, all the party agents, would have a copy of that. And that was the fail-safe. Now, somehow, the technology didn't work in perhaps as many as half of the polling stations. And a lot of the opposition candidates think that's some kind of sabotage. So I think there's a sin of omission in terms of getting the technology to work. It failed so systematically, it looks like it's deliberate. And I also think in some cases there were sins of commission, where the foot soldiers of the Independent National Electoral Commission actually worked hand in glove with members of the ruling party, for which Bola Tinubu stood, to actually move polling stations at the last minute, close them down, keep out voters in opposition areas and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of issues to be debated in the forthcoming hearings at the Supreme Court. So both the two main opposition candidates, Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi, are taking their case to the Supreme Court, and we'll see how those judges assess it. But I think this time may be different because they have a lot of digital evidence to base their conclusions on.
Now, we've been hearing, Craig, that there was a very low turnout for this election in particular. Why do we think this is?
Because is anything really going to change there? If after over 6 decades, one of the richest nations in the world, oil-rich, mineral-rich nation, if what we just saw in the videotape is what you have after over 6 decades, hello, Lagos, we have a problem.
Well, let's talk about some of those issues. We've got a cash shortage.
Well, you got the pollution down in the Delta, which is something years ago I covered, and that certainly hasn't gotten any better. Look, the Western oil companies, energy companies, mining companies, they went into these countries to make deals with the locals. I mean, I even wrote a book on the bribery that went down in Nigeria years ago with during the oil trade, middlemen. It's an old story, it's a long story. But, you know, everyone had their hand in everyone else's pocket. And I don't see that stopping. And it really is shameful for the Nigerian people. I mean, think about how wealthy this country is. Energy wealthy it is. The number of smart people who live there, the young people, I don't care who wins the election. I do not, based on its history, see any of these people doing anything to end this long-term trend of rampant corruption, pollution. It just goes on and on and on. Is there a solution? I don't know.
Now, on a positive sign, at least, Muhammadu Buhari, the former president, did step down after his second term. Do you think that's a positive thing to take from this, or are you equally as cynical?
No, I'm as cynical as Craig. And when you talk about low turnout, I mean, I have not seen the breakdown. I'm sure Patrick has, but think about being a young Nigerian. This is
something like 3/4 are under 25 or something like that in the population of
exactly. This is an extremely young country, the most populous country on what is a very, very young continent. You're born and raised in Nigeria, and here you are in your 20s, and you can vote for a new president. How cynical are you going to be when basically the end result is you have this old guy and part of the old guard taking power in what, you know, for the next several years in what is basically, as Patrick says, a deeply flawed process. I mean, why even bother to go out to the polls?
From this vote?